Hey there, I'm Graham from Light Pong, and today I'm going to be working on a new game for light tennis, for Light Pong. We figured that we'd give some insight into how we approach making new games. We're going to make a Simon Says game, and I think essentially how that's going to work is the user will be prompted with a pattern, and that pattern will appear on the left and right sides of the light strip. If it appears here, if it's just like bing, then you press this button, and if it goes bing, bing, then you go bing, bing. The first thing that I normally do when working on a new project is I end up copying over our idle screen and our score counter screen. So this idle screen is something that we made for light tennis specifically. It's really basic. I think it needs some work still, but it just shows a nice pattern across the strip. And in order to start a game, you have to click in on both buttons and start like that. And it's going to freeze because the idle screen doesn't know where to go right now. So let's see. Simon Says, I'm going to make a new scene called, Simon Says Game. You start making scenes by importing the Light Pong library. Is this the syntax? I always forget. From Light Pong, import all. Cool. And we're going to want to make a new scene. So I'm going to call that class scene that inherits from scene base. I'm going to put in the name of our scene here. Let's call it Simon Says Game. Every scene should have a start class, or start method, stop method, and an update method. Let's just start by drawing something onto the strip. I'm going to make a new method. I'm going to call it draw scene. For Simon Says, because this test unit I'm working on only has 2 buttons, we want to show 2 options, right? So to do that, I'm going to have it draw a line on the left and the right side. The way the light strip is set up is this is 150 pixels long. We can draw something in the middle of it by taking the length of the light strip and dividing it by 2, and then we're going to draw a line there. So I'm going to call light strip dot draw line centered. And what that'll do is allow us to pass it a position and also a half width. And we need to give it a color. You can get a color by calling lightstrip.getColor. And you can pass it in red, green, blue color values like you would with hex color values. Okay, here's our green line. Sweet. I can make it longer really quick. I can say, let's make the half width 30 pixels. So it's 60 pixels long. Upload it. Cool, it's long. But really, again, we want to make this 2 options because we're doing Simon Says. So you can see here's the middle index. What we need is right here and right here. And we can do that by getting half of the middle index. So if this is like 100 or whatever, then we get half of that, which is 50. And that'll be our first half. And then we can take, which will be a quarter, right? We can take that quarter and add it to our middle, and that'll be 150. Whatever the length is, doesn't matter. It's more about ratios here. Cool, so now you see we got these 3 dots. Ideally, we want to use this as a center and this as a center to present choices. Let's come up with 2 new colors. Let's do color option 1. That's going to be, whatever this color is. That's cyan, magenta, or yellow. I don't remember which one. And likewise here, I'm just going to get another color. Make this color option 2. So again, following that pattern earlier, let's draw a line centered at this line 1 middle index, which is this index. And then let's draw the other line. Draw a line centered. Where is that? At the line 2 middle index, which is this one. Let's also make a variable here that is line option half width. So I'm going to use this just to show how long these lines should be. So now they're drawing on the right sides. Something you also may notice is that the pixels we drew for the indexes on these are gone. That is because the order in which you call these draw commands does matter. Let's make these a little bit longer. What does 25 look like? Cool. Let's see. We want to make some kind of sequence. I'm going to make a section here. I'm going to make a class here called state. So thinking about the game for a second, and Simon says in just the core gameplay loop, there's two states, right? There is showing what to repeat, and then there is the user actually inputting what it should be, what they should be repeating. Let's write that out. So state, we'll call the first state show sequence. Let's make another state called enter sequence. And I'm going to make a method called set state. I'm making a method for this because it may be helpful down the line for us to perform an action depending on this. So we're going to say if self.currentState is scene.state.showSequence, then we'll do something. Otherwise, if self.currentState is scene.state. What else should we have? Enter sequence? Yeah. And we'll do something else. Make a little state machine here. Let's do update show sequence. And then let's make update enter sequence. And we'll call these. So show sequence. We have to come up with some kind of sequence to show. Let's make a utility method called generate sequence. Now, the way Simon says works is it starts off just by showing you one option, and then the next time it shows you two, next time it shows you three. So it needs to take in the number of options it should present. And this will return a list. What does the list contain? What variable? Could be a number. The numbers could correlate to which thing to show off. It could be a Boolean because we only have left, right, but in the case that we want to mod this in the future, Boolean isn't good enough. Why don't we make another enumerator class? I'm struggling to think of what to name this because I want to write it to be expandable down the line. That's kind of it's the first thing I think about when making these games is because, our hardware may change. And depending on how our hardware changes, it would be nice to adapt how these games are played. Let's make a new method here called, get random option. Make an array here called options. And it's just going to have the options in it. There's a lot of ways you can do this. This isn't the most optimized way to do this at all because it needs to create this array every time this is called. It doesn't really need to be optimized. This is going to get called as soon as the scene starts. And it's going to be pretty snappy anyways. You could optimize this by having it generate a number between the lowest index here and the largest index. That would work just as well. I think this reads a little better. So cool. So we have a way to generate a sequence of a certain length. So every time we enter the show sequence state, I'm going to make a variable here called self.currentSequence. We're going to generate a new sequence every time. The only thing is we need to know how long it's going to be. I guess for now, let's just make it by default 5. We'll make it increase the number later. We'll test it by printing out what this sequence is. So let's print out self.currentSequence. I'm going to upload this, and let's see what happens. Right now we can see it just generated a sequence 00101. Let's restart it. Now it's doing 11011. Cool. Let's actually display that. The first thing I think of is how long each pulse lasts. The other thing I think of is that we need to know which option we should be pulsing. So that means we have to have some semblance of where we are and our sequence, which means we should have a current sequence index. Let's figure out how to draw the scene. We need to be able to draw whichever option we should be showing. We also need to, from that index and from that option, we need to know where to draw it. So let's make a new utility method down here. Get option position. We'll get the current option's position. The other thing we need to know to draw the option, not only its position, we also need to know its width, and we need to know its color. So here we should also have a method called get option color. Right now I'm just going to have it return a dummy color, get the color. So let's get option color. Let's call self.get option color and give it the option we want to show. Presumably once we have the position and the color, we can just call lightstrip.draw, what is it, draw line centered. Cool. Now it's just drawing. This is the 0 index. It's not really showing in the right position because get option position is just hard-coded to return 0. So remember our code earlier, we found out the right indexes to show them at based on getting the middle. So we can just return the middle divided by 2. And then the other option was the middle plus half the middle. Let's see what it does now. Awesome, now it's at the right spot. If we refresh this a couple times, it should give us, yeah, see, 0 is over here, 1 is over here. Cool. Okay, well, let's have it do the same thing here, except with colors. Okay, we need to increment our sequence index after some time. Something we need to know then is how much time has passed since the last time an option was pulsed. So in update show sequence, before we draw, let's add some extra logic. So every single time the game loop happens, the game logic executes, we want to see if we should proceed. And we know that we should proceed if this amount of time has passed. In this case, 1 second. So if that amount of time is greater than the option pulse speed, then we should do something. Well, we want to pulse the next option, so we should move forward in the sequence. Let's do that. If self.current sequence index is greater than or equal to length of our current sequence, then what we want to do is set the state to scene.state.enter sequence. So as soon as we finish showing it, we want the player to enter it. Okay, I put together this log statement to show us how the scene is changing in real time. The first thing that I noticed though is that this kind of sucks. If it's doing the same side, it's not really easy to tell that it's pulsed. Like this sequence is 0, 1, 1, 1. Could you tell? I could not. What I'm going to do is add a bit of code to our draw show sequence method. I'm going to get the number of seconds between now and the last time it was pulsed. What I'm going to do with that is have it pulse the color based on how many seconds have passed. So like as soon as it shows, it'll be bright like this and then it'll dim. We have a nice little easing library. I'm going to make a variable here called option brightness. What we can do with that is multiply the color by a number. In this case, if we have our number between 0 and 1, it'll let us dim or brighten the color we're trying to show. So, like I was saying, we have a nice easing library. You can access it calling ease dot, let's say, what kind of ease would we want to do? Linear. And we want it to start at 1 and go to 0.2, and we'll traverse that number using time since pulse. Let's just see what that looks like. Cool, so you can see it's pulsing. It is a bit slow. Multiply that by 4. Now it's almost too quick. Also, I want to bring the brightness down, so I'm going to adjust this lower value to 0.1. Also, I don't really like the linear look here, so what I can do is a quad out. Let's see how that looks. It looks kind of good. Gonna bring down the speed one more time. I could even make the speed relative to how fast it's going. And we can do that by dividing this by option pulse speed. Cool, that looks way better already. I'm gonna tweak this setting a bit to make this a bit quicker. Wow, that was quite the sequence. Let me see what that looks like again. Cool, okay. Make it just a little bit slower, so it's not super obnoxious. Okay. Next, let's do the enter state. Let's make a new draw method. Def draw enter sequence. We need to do a couple things. We need to read the player input, which should probably not happen in the draw method. And I'm thinking what we're going to do is make a method to check for input, and then maybe that method will set some variables in the class that I don't know what we're going to do yet. Let's just make a method for this. Let's do process player input, and that's going to take in nothing and return nothing. And I'm just going to make sure that we call it up here. We need to find out if the player chooses an option and then do something based on that. Let's make a new method called check for option selection. Just selected option is going to equal this. So to read player input, we've got a nice system for that. It's just input dot player 1 or dot player 2, and then you can call stuff on that. If player 1's button is down on this frame, then we do want to return an option. Let's have it return option 1. If player 2's button's down on this frame, then we want to return option 2. Otherwise, if neither of those states have been met, then we want to return none. We need to act on if the player just selected an option. So I'm going to say if just selected option is not none. If we selected something, we need to act on the current sequence. So we can reuse the current sequence array, that's fine. We can also reuse the current sequence index. Here's something interesting. We need to check if the player was correct or not. Let's define that the correct choice, the correct option, is the current sequence at the current index. And we need to check to see if the player has made the right choice. We can do that by saying if the just selected option is the correct option, then the player has made the right choice. Otherwise, the player has made the wrong choice. If the player has made the right choice, then we should increment the current sequence index. So let's do that. And we need to check if we're done. If the player beat it, then what do? Restart, I guess. Let's just go back to the show sequence state, which, remember, will generate a new sequence for us and show it. If the player made the wrong choice, what do? The game should just end at that point. So we need some kind of game over screen. Let's, for now, let's just have it return to idle. The next thing we need to do now, we've gotten this process player input logic. This will control the logic for it, but we're not drawing anything. So we need to draw what the player is doing. Here's what I'm going to do. I could just copy paste all this code. It's kind of gross though. I'm going to make a new method here called draw option. And then what I'm going to do now is take this and just kind of lift it and put it there. So what we can do now is call this method we just made, draw option. We need to pass it the option we want to draw, and then also the last time it was pulsed. And we know that is this variable. And now we can do the same thing here. So self.drawOption. The option we want to show is that variable we made. Oh, you know what we need to do here? This can be none, which will freak this code out. So we should only draw an option on screen if the player has actually selected one yet. And we have it reuse the same last time option pulsed variable. So, with all this code, let's give it a shot. Cool. Cool. Awesome. Oh, I guess I pressed the wrong one. Let's try that again. Left, 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 right. Okay, so there's no delay in between the you did it right and you did it wrong. So let's make a new state. When we're in a state, something should happen. I think we should just sit here and delay for a little bit. We're going to do the same kind of timer setup we did in update show sequence. If enough time has passed and we should transition states, then we need to do something. We should transition states in that case. So this is just a delay. Let's call self.setState. And let's go to the show sequence state. Let's see how that looks. Right, left. Okay, it did delay, but we forgot to make a draw method here, so I think we should fill the strip with a color when we've completed a round, and then fade to black. So let's make a new variable, let's call it wipe width, and that's going to range, let's do that linear ease, that's going to range from 0, it's going to start off with no width, and then half of the whole strip's length. Get the amount of time since this state started. So we'll pass that in to this ease, so it'll gradually go from 0 to filling up the whole strip. I'm going to set our sequence length to a grand spanking 1 right now, so it becomes turbo easy mode. Let's see how this looks. Oh wait, did I call this? Oh, I did, we're good. Okay. That looks like something. That kind of sucks. Let's see, how should we fix that? I think this should be a lot quicker. So let's change this. Let's bring this down to like 0.5. I think also what we should do is we need to make this not linear. Instead of using the linear ease, let's use something else. Like quad in, maybe? That looks better. What about quartz in? Kind of dig that. There's also, what else is there? There's cubic in. There's also sine in. I think I liked quad or quartz in the most. Feels like it's paced well. But it does need to be a little slower. See what that looks like at 1 second. Making some visual tweaks. I think I'm going to use that, and I'm just going to delay it. It's still not good enough. I think the awkwardness comes from as soon as you press, it lights up and then transitions, which doesn't look great. Okay, that's a little bit better. I think we should delay it. This will only draw if this is greater than 0. There we go, that looks a lot better. To make this more polished, what we're going to do next is make it so that instead of it just filling up and then immediately disappearing, it'll fill up and then fade to black. I'm going to make a new sequence called fade in. Let's add that to our state machine. We have to make a new method for this state. Let's make a new variable up top. Fade in duration. Let's make the same timer here. And once we finish fading in, then we want to go to the show state sequence. We need to create a new method, draw fade in. Let's just by default fill the whole strip. We can do that by doing lightStrip.drawFill. So in order to fill the screen, we need a color. And for that, we have defined that win color, right? Although we want this to fade. Something we'll need is the local time. I'm going to copy this. And we're going to do something really similar to the pulse we did for drawing options. And it's going to start at 1 and end at 0. And we're going to use local time. And let's see how this works. Okay, so there's something wrong on line 183. Easy. Okay, we forgot to set the fill color. Put that in there. We also forgot to use fill brightness. Now that should work. Okay, it's just a really long transition. Let's clean this fade duration up a lot. Okay, this feels a lot better. Cool, okay. I think we should change our win color to green, just so it makes more sense. So, I'm just going to make a totally new scene for losing. I call it game over. .py. Yeah, I think that's okay. Let's, what I was going to say earlier is I'm realizing that this just isn't Simon at all. It's not Simon Says. It generates a new sequence every time, and we're supposed to be building on an existing sequence. And that's going to take in an option. And it's going to return a list. Sorry, it should take in a sequence, not an option. I think literally all we're going to do is call sequence.append. So it's just going to append something on the end of it. That means we don't need generate sequence anymore. So I am going to get rid of this. Cool. And then I think what we'll do is self.add option to sequence given the current sequence. Let's see how that works. If it works even. Okay. Awesome. All right, there we go. Well, that's pretty much a game right there. I think it needs polish. This idle screen needs to be changed because this is the light tennis idle screen. The next thing I would do on this would be to adjust rumble. After that, I would work on sound pretty heavily. After that is just upping the graphics even more. Check it out, Matt. We got a new game. You want to play?
Oh, what? What did he just say? There's a new game? Oh,
it's Simon Says. Yeah, go in. So with the new models, we're going to have 2 buttons on both controllers. So we'll be able to up the ante. So we can divide the strip in 4 rather than just in 2. Thank you, Matt, for the playtest.
of course.
So that's how I go about coming up with a quick game. Hopefully you enjoyed an inside peek at some of this stuff, and also at what our framework looks like right now to shed some light on things before we get full funding and we have the resources to devote more time to it. We've been prototyping this framework in C++ initially, and then we've ported it all over to Python. It's not really super optimized, which is why, like, if you look right now, and we're using a very basic gradient implementation, so these colors would be smooth, but they're not. And it's also a little laggy when we draw gradients and stuff. It's all an artifact of how we're developing it. Once we get funding, our first software task is to start implementing this framework inside of the Python interpreter itself. So it's going to be C-level code, which will make this a lot nicer. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. All the syntax that you've seen is very, very much subject to change. I'm not even sure if in the end we're going to go with a class structure. My primary goal is to make this easier for beginners, and I think right now it is easier for programmers. It's not easier for beginners yet. So it's got a bit to go, but we're getting there. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.